to start the Haggadah, and we're going to start by talking about the fact that we drink 4 cups of wine. One blessing of wine is said over the Kiddush at the beginning of the meal. Then another one is told over the Magid, the telling of the story. Then the 3rd cup of wine is said over the Birkat HaMazon, and then a 4th cup of wine at the Hallel. What's the source of this idea? So the Mishnah in Psachim 99b tells us even in a poor person of Israel, even a poor one of Israel should not have less than 4 cups of wine. And we see from here that even the Rashi and the Rashbam on the spot there say that even if there's a person who's so poor that they don't have enough money for food, they have to borrow money just to be able to get the 4 cups of wine. So we see from here that everybody has an obligation to drink the 4 cups of wine at the Seder, even if one is very poor. Even if a person is very poor. So one of the questions that the commentaries ask, why is this considered that the rabbis instituted 4 cups of wine? The first cup was really on Kiddush, so they only really instituted 3 cups. So, and he says that generally speaking, when it comes to the Kiddush, a person can make a blessing over bread if they prefer that, but on Seder night, you have to do it specifically on wine. It also says that even if you're taking money from charity, the charity has to give you wine. So some say, what's the source for this idea? There are some who say that it is not a rabbinic institution, but it is from the Bible. What's the source in the Bible? But the Torah writes 4 expressions of redemption. It says in Parashas Va'era, Rashi and Rashbam cite this. But so some say that it's biblical based upon those 4 expressions. But the Babylonian Talmud says that it's only rabbinic. And so the Babylonian Talmud says it's only rabbinic. And some say there are those who discuss when was this takana instituted. So some say that it was instituted according to the Sfas Emes. This takana was only instituted after the destruction of the temple when they did not have a Korban Pesach. So that's the whole question. Was there the 4 cups of wine during the second temple or not? So, but Rav Yitzchak Al-Chadav says that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted this. Takana. And some say that even the patriarchs also drank from these 4 cups of wine. And the Megala Amukos has a source for this in the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob, because it says, and Rashi says that it was the night of Pesach. So we see from here that he was drinking the 4 cups of wine at that time. So that's what Rashi says, that night was Pesach. Interesting. Okay. In the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, they bring several reasons for the mitzvah of drinking the 4 cups of wine. What are the several reasons for the mitzvah of drinking the 4 cups of wine? Hold on one second. That one reason is Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Benaiah, explains that this corresponds to the 4 expressions of redemption that appear in the redemption from Egypt. That's what I referred to before. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says in the Jerusalem Talmud that it corresponds to the 4 times that the word cup appears in the dreams of Pharaoh. Because it says it says, not in the dreams of Paro, in the dreams of the Sarah Mashkim, who was in prison, that Joseph interpreted his dream. As it states, Kos Paro biadi, Eschato tam al Kos Paro, Latenet Kos al Kaf Paro, Venatata Kos Paro biado. These 4 cups correspond to the 4 cups that we have to drink. And there's a third opinion in the Jerusalem Talmud, which is that Rabbi Levi said that these 4 cups correspond to the 4 kingdoms that subjugated the Jewish people. They're the Kasdians, the Mediaites, the Yavanites, and the Edomites. That's the third opinion. There are those who say that the Rabbanan in the Jerusalem Talmud, that it corresponds to the 4 cups of punishments that in the future God will bring upon the nations of the world. Take this cup of wine in Jeremiah, this hot cup of wine. Take this cup of gold in Babylon. The Kikos biyad Hashem. There's a cup in the hand of God. And Yimtar al Rishayim Pachim Eish Gafrit Veruach Zafot Menat Kosam. Also in Psalms. And there is a 5th approach that this corresponds to the 4 punishments that the Egyptians were afflicted with. The punishment of the firstborn, punishment of drowning in the sea, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, and also in the future. Okay. So this is that's one of the, hello, Steve and Shoshana here. We give this to Steve and Shoshana. We're studying the Haggadah. How are you doing, my friends? Okay. What? You want a different one? I got different ones. I got many Haggadahs. So we're talking about the 4 cups of wine. So, well, we discussed that, but there are a lot of explanations, probably 400 explanations about why we have 4 cups of wine at the Seder night. So he says, the Vilna Gaon says it corresponds to the 4 types of poverty or afflictions. One is somebody who has nothing to eat, one who has something to eat, but he doesn't have enough. And there's somebody who's weary from traveling the whole time. And then there's the affliction of exile. The Mata Moshe, he says that we drink the 4 cups corresponding to the 4 exile or the 4 redemptions that there'll be for Jewish people, that in all the future generations. One is that Abraham was redeemed, that Egypt was redeemed, the ultimate redemption and the third one is according to the time of the exile. I don't know. These seem like a little bit of stretch. Okay, so anyway, so now it says, why specifically wine? Why do you have to drink specifically wine? Why can't you do the 4 cups of well, you know, there's a classic question that they went to the Brisker Rav, and somebody asked the Brisker Rav, not the Brisker Rav, they asked Rav Chaim. A person came to Rav Chaim. He said, can I make the 4 cups of wine on milk? And he quickly took out his checkbook and gave him some money. And they said, how do you know he knew money? He says, well, if he's asking about it, he's serving dairy at the Seder. They didn't know about dairy Seders back then or vegan Seders. So clearly he doesn't have enough money for meat. So that's the classic question. So the Mordechai, who's the Mordechai? He died, he was killed, Al-Kiddush Hashem, in the Rindfleisch massacres in 1298. So they said, why did they say specifically is the wine is instituted corresponding to 4 expressions of redemption? Why not 4 types of bread? Different types of matzah. So why wine? So we have here, let's see how many answers we have to this question here. We have 10. Should we go through all 10? So one answer is from the Shla, the Shnei Luchos Abris, Rabbi Isaac Alevi Horowitz. I think he was like the 17th century. I could be off by a few years. He writes that if the real reason for the wine was only because of the 4 expressions of redemption, then 4 types of bread would be sufficient. But it's also corresponding to 4 cups that were mentioned in Joseph's dream, Joseph's explanation of the butler's dream. That's there in the verses at the beginning of Parshas Va'era in Exodus chapter 6. It says 4 expressions of redemption. It says, "V'otzeti v'itzalti v'ga'alti v'lakachti," and they mean as follows: that I led you out here. V'otzeti, I took you out. V'itzalti, I saved you. V'ga'alti, I redeemed you. V'lakachti, I took you out. And then some also say ve'veti, and I brought you in. So that's why some say that there's a 5th cup. Some connected to that. But if it was just about the redemption, we could have had bread. But it's not just about redemption. It's also about the cups in Joseph's interpretation of the dream. That's what the Shloh says. The Maharal, the chief rabbi of Prague. Now, the most famous Jew from Prague is not the Maharal, but Kafka. I went to a Kafka exhibit in New York. I was extremely disappointed. Yeah, they tried to make him woke, and it was very disappointing. They didn't even mention in this exhibit in the what's that famous library that they turned into a museum? Morgan Library, J.P. Morgan. They didn't even mention the trial in the exhibit. All they talked about was metamorphosis. They didn't go on letter to father. I'm a very big Kafka fan. I was deeply disappointed in that exhibit. Should have known better. The Maharal explained that we and this night we went up a spiritual level, and so that symbolizes by the wine. Basically, this is the idea that others say too. Wine helps us elevate ourselves to an even higher spiritual level. It just like transforms our nature. So that's another approach. Okay, I mean, I don't really want to go through all of these. Now, there's also a practice to drink specifically the red wine. Red wine is specific. You should drink the red wine. What's the reason? Because it says, so what's the reason? So the first explanation is in the Talmud, Pesachim, Rabbi Yehuda says you need to drink wine, red wine specifically, and Rav explains based on the verse, Al terei yayin ki et adam. It's a verse that refers to wine that's red. But 3 other explanations are brought down because it refers to the punishments in the future upon the nations, and wine is the color of blood, and so therefore it's the best to use red wine because that's what the nation's blood will flow. Other nations, not our nation. Or as the Ruah says, it's to our nation. That it refers to the blood that Pharaoh slaughtered the children of Israel and washed them in their blood. He took a bath in their blood. And he also, who's the Or Zarua, I should say? Or Zarua lived in Vienna and he died in 1217. Okay, so maybe 1238. He's in the 13th century. He died in 13th century Vienna. Another explanation is why specifically red wine. It reminds us of the 2 bloods that cause us to be worthy of redemption. What are the 2 bloods? The blood of circumcision and the blood of... No, I didn't catch you. You just think for 10 seconds and you'll get it. The famous blood on Passover is the blood of the Paschal Lamb. And finally, early modern commentary, the Pri Megadim says that it's because it reminds us of the plague of blood. Okay. So now the question is, how come this was instituted if it's dangerous? Because in the Gemara, they tell a story where somebody drank the wine and he had a headache for 6 months. I think that was, I forget who it was. And so also generally, anyway, it's a whole another question. You're not supposed to drink wine in pairs. That's another problem. Okay.
Can you answer this question?
Yeah.
If somebody did say this, what's this all about?
I mean the wine. Well, the very simple answer is that it's our obligation to tell the story of how we came to be, to remind ourselves of our core values, to remind ourselves what our responsibility are as Jews and as human beings, and to teach that not only to ourselves, but also to the next generation. And that's what this is. Does that make sense to you? That's a core message. That's what it is. So then if they start asking you specific questions, then we have to know more. So that's why we're going through this now. Okay. So even a poor person, he said, has to borrow money in order to drink because everybody on this night has to act like they're free. Everybody on this night has to act like they're free. Okay. I'm skipping a couple of these questions. So let's say somebody hates wine. Do they have to drink the wine? I personally hate wine. I really don't like wine. What about you, Jeff? Nothing. I mean, I don't like Shoshana, your wine. I mean, I find it gives me a headache. I don't like it. So, is that true? I never heard that one. If you know a wine that you can recommend to me that I won't get a headache from, I'm definitely open to that. But I usually get a headache from the wine. It's actually not pleasant for me to drink the wine. Of course, it's kosher wine because without saying, you're not going to drink non-kosher wine. So the Rashba's 14th century Barcelona, was asked a question about somebody who doesn't drink wine the whole year because doesn't agree with him. Is it permitted to him to just eat the bread? So he says no. He says you have to drink the wine. He says like Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, who in the Talmud, that he didn't like drinking wine, but nevertheless on the night of Pesach he drank 4 cups, and then he was sick from Pesach to Shavuos because he drank this wine because he had a bad headache. And that's the Gemara in the Durham 49b. And the Yerushalmi, they write about Rabbi Yonah that he was sick from Pesach to Sukkot because he drank the wine. Okay, so he says, also he says you could water down the wine or something like that. So you're supposed to drink the wine. But let's say the wine is going to cause you to fall asleep. Do we still say drink the wine? The Mishnah Berurah says that if you're going to fall asleep, if you drink the wine, then you don't have to drink it. Because that's even worse than a headache. You can't be up if the wine puts you to sleep. What are you going to do? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so let me just answer your question. Of course, there's a debate, but the simple explanation is that a quarter lug is basically an egg and a half with its shell. But our eggs are smaller than what they used to do. And so they say it's like 3 average eggs. And so there is a dispute here between the Gaon Reb Chaim Noah, and according to him, it's 86 grams. which is like a cup. And Chazon Ish says, no, he says 150 grams. And the Brisker Rav says you need 170 grams. One cup. You're right, they keep getting more and more. And the Mishnah Berurah says that for the first cup, which is biblical commandment, you have to take the double size. But anyway, even though that's the size of the cup, and the cup has to be filled, but you only have to drink the majority of the cup. You don't have to drink the entire cup. Hold on one second. I want to just hold on. Okay. So we're talking about the measurements. Usually they say that it's around 4.4 ounces is the cup, and you have to drink the majority of that. So this is like an 8-ounce cup. So you don't need such a big cup, but the cup you take has to be filled to the top because you don't want to look like a pauper. But we have another question. Do women have to drink the 4 cups? Let's see what they say. The Gemara says everybody has to drink, men and women. Everybody has to drink, the men and the women. But that's a question. The 4 cups is a positive commandment that's time-bound. And generally speaking, we say time-bound positive commandments, women are exempt. We're talking about the 4 cups of wine. So why do women have to drink it? So the reason why women have to drink it is because they also were redeemed. They were also in the miracle. They were also redeemed. So that's the first explanation. Others say, though, the reason why women have to drink is not because they were also redeemed, but because the whole redemption happened because of them. All redemption happened because of them. Because of the women, because because of their meritorious act. So Tosfos questions okay. Okay, fine. Anyway, so women have to drink the 4 cups. Another question is, do children have to drink the 4 cups of wine? Well, first of all, they could just drink grape juice and that'll be sufficient. But are the children obligated? So the position of the Chachamim is that everybody has to drink, men, women, and children. Well, grape juice. So Rabbi Yehuda says, what benefit is there for children to drink wine in the Talmud? But rather, what you should do is give them nuts instead, so that they don't fall asleep and ask questions. So there's a whole question whether there's any value. My son who's getting married now, Eli, he's getting married Monday, big offer on Shabbos, that one time when he was younger, we didn't know, and he drank some wine at the Friday night table. He was a little kid then. Next thing we knew, we see him vomiting. A little kid drinks wine, you can get sick. So, yeah. So the point is, why do the children have to drink wine? So we're talking about whether or not children should drink wine. They were also redeemed. So, okay, anyway, that's another. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Right. So the whole idea of whether or not grape juice is wine is the question, whether or not you could drink grape juice. And the truth is, most authorities say you could drink grape juice at the Seder. Some are strict, but most say you could drink grape juice. Here, let me see if I can get to that discussion here. No, I what I do is I mix it, the wine and the grape juice, which for myself. I tell people that they could drink grape juice. Here, is grape juice considered wine? So the Mishnah Berurah says grape juice, the The Gemara says a person can just squeeze out the grapes and that'll be sufficient, and drink it. It's sufficient. But the Shulchan Aruch brings in the name of the Pri Chadash and Reb Chaim Shabtai that you need the 4 cups of joy, and grape juice isn't joy. So you need wine and also freedom, and grape juice doesn't celebrate freedom. That's what some want to say. So what about, anyway, it's a whole dispute here. Yeah, some say you can't do it. It's a whole dispute whether or not grape juice is okay, but most say it's fine. Most today say it's fine to drink grape juice. Yeah. Oh, for sure, kids. I would not give kids wine. No, we're talking about for adults even. There's always going to be somebody who says it's not good. Oh, yeah, a question about grape juice. Yeah, sure. What's your question? What's your question? Yeah, no, I think they're talking about like mind-altering enjoyment. But you're absolutely right. Listen, everybody, there's always gonna be somebody who doesn't like one thing. But most say grape juice is okay. Okay, look, we're just touching the surface of the wine, but I feel like even though we're just touching the surface of the wine, I think that tomorrow we'll go on to the next topic, even though we discussed the wine, and tomorrow we'll go on to reclining at the Seder. And there's a lot to talk about the wining. There's a lot to talk about the wine, but tomorrow we'll talk about the reclining.